When Apple announced its new second-gen HomePod speaker, I had, well, a lot of thoughts, but the number one question on my mind was, could two of these new HomePods make a decent home entertainment system? I think you'll be surprised by what I found out. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and I don't think you should buy a new Apple HomePod Gen 2. Actually, I think you should buy at least two if you're gonna buy any at all. Now, before you click away thinking I'm just here to shill Apple's new HomePod speaker, let me be clear. I think the HomePod on its own is kind of a tough sell in today's market. But ever since I reviewed the original HomePod, in which I basically said it's a jaw-dropping speaker you shouldn't buy, I always wondered what it would be like to use two of them as a home entertainment system. Well, I got that chance this time around, and I'm frankly shocked at the results. So I want to talk about how well two second-gen Apple HomePods work as a home entertainment system, and who might want to pull the trigger on such an idea. Before I get into it, you know the vibes. If you like this video, let us know. If you want to see more, let YouTube know. And if you have any questions or comments, you know where to go for that, down below. Thanks as always for your support and engagement. Okay, let's do this. So let's start with what's new about this version of the HomePod. And before I get into it, I just want to acknowledge that on paper, it doesn't seem like a lot is new. And perhaps that is why I've heard so many people clowning it. But I don't really think that's fair. Let me explain. The first thing that's, well, it's kind of new is its very existence. And I say that because Apple discontinued the original. Why did they do that? We can only speculate. Some think it's because it didn't sell so well. So then why is it back? Well, again, we can only speculate, but I got the distinct impression from Apple that it feels this version of the HomePod is way better and that the world is just more ready for it now. That perhaps the original HomePod was ahead of its time. I guess we'll see if that plays out. So here it is. It's about the same size and shape as the original. And side note, I remember it being larger than this, but perhaps that's because I see this crazy Amazon speaker in our studio every day and for whatever reason kind of lumped the two together. Anyway, it's a pretty compact speaker, especially considering the sound you get from it, which I'll dive into deeper shortly. Up top is a now larger touch-sensitive graphical display that has colorful animations for Siri interactions, along with two very obvious plus and minus buttons. Also, as you can see, there's a new midnight color in addition to the classic Apple white color option. Now, those are the only discernible visual differences. The rest of what's new is inside. Let's start with the most profound change, and that's the inclusion of Apple's S7 chip. That's the same chip you'll find in the Apple Watch Series 7. And what's notable about that is the computational audio work that it does. Now, it's easy to dismiss that marketing term, but in practice, it has a significant effect on how the speaker sounds. Because inside the speaker is one large woofer and 5 beamforming tweeters. That's down from 7 tweeters in the original version, along with 4 microphones. That's down from 6 in the original. But the key isn't how many drivers and mics it has, but in how they get used now. So the HomePod is capable of reading the room acoustically speaking. It's like the Marvel superhero Daredevil in that it can basically see the room acoustically. That means that if you put baby in a corner, it will know it is in the corner and adjust the bass output accordingly so it isn't too boomy. It also knows when it's close to a boundary, like a wall, or maybe jammed between books on a bookshelf, and can change the way it operates so that it isn't blasting sound into the books, but rather routing sound out toward the listener. But it also uses the acoustical information of its environment in order to pull off spatial audio, which I'll talk about more in a moment. Point being, the speaker is more capable of making itself sound good in just about any environment than the previous version, giving the set it and forget it simplicity that folks tend to like. Also new inside is a temperature and humidity sensor, which I've heard a lot of folks making fun of as well. Why do you need that? Especially when smart thermostats are so readily available today? Well, consider that there are a lot of folks who don't have centralized heating and cooling systems. Most smart thermostats are meant to operate a furnace or a heat pump or something, but if you got a house full of box ACs or space heaters, you could use a HomePod or HomePod Mini to act as a thermostat in each room and control those dumb climate control devices, or the smart ones too. Probably more use cases than most people would initially think. And that leads me to the next new thing integrated into the second-gen HomePod, a thread radio. So previous HomePod and HomePod Minis are Matter compatible. That's the open smart device communication standard, but they don't have thread radios built in. With a Thread radio built in, you can create a closed network for your smart devices so that they don't have to connect to your Wi-Fi router directly. You can just point them all at the Thread network, and any other device with a Thread radio will help create a mesh network so you don't have to rely on your Wi-Fi strength for everything to work. Also, the HomePod will now listen for smoke detectors and other alarms and alert you if it hears them. You can then use the HomePod as an intercom to ask if everything is okay. Probably isn't. Use a smart camera to check in and make sure the house isn't burning down, or simply dispatch emergency responders to check on things. Other than those new additions, it's still a smart speaker, right? It plays music and podcasts. It lets you use voice to ask for information or control smart home stuff. It's a smart speaker, and at $300, it's an expensive one. Does it sound good? Yes, it does, and it always has, but that's not enough in a world where most folks are clearly fine with having a bunch of smaller, less expensive smart speakers that sound good enough. So from that perspective, I think the HomePod remains a tough sell in this market, as do all larger, bigger sounding smart speakers from other companies, actually. This issue isn't limited to the HomePod. I know the Google Home Max didn't exactly fly off shelves, and I'm not seeing a gang of Amazon Echo Studios out there either. So good luck to Apple breaking down that barrier. However, add a second HomePod? Well, now we're talking. Maybe it seems crazy at first that I'm suggesting that you buy two of something when buying just one doesn't make good sense. But guys, the return on investment you get out of buying two HomePods and operating them as a stereo pair is orders of magnitude better than just having one. With two HomePods, we're now talking about a $600 audio system that can sonically compete with any number of powered stereo speakers that cost the same or more, and any number of soundbars that live in basically the same price bracket. So along with my Sony A95K QD OLED TV and a brand new Apple TV 4K, I set up a pair of second gen HomePods, a pair of the SVS Prime Wireless Pro, a Sonos Beam, and I pit the three against each other. Now, the SVS speakers cost quite a bit more than a pair of HomePods, and the Sonos Beam costs a bit less, but I figured if the HomePods could outperform the Beam, they might just justify their expense. And if they could at least stand up to the SVS Prime Wireless, they might look like a bargain in comparison. And folks, I was really pleasantly surprised at what happened. I mean, from the perspective of sound quality, cinematic experience, flexibility, and ease of use, the HomePod stood up very well against the excellent Prime Wireless Pro and all but blew the Sonos Beam out of the water. Now, before I describe the sound experience that I'm getting here, let's throw some caveats in so we all understand the playing field we're working with. The SVS Prime Wireless Pro are an excellent pair of speakers with much more connection options and can be expanded to include a subwoofer. But they aren't smart speakers unless you connect a smart device to them. Also keep in mind when comparing costs that we have to include an Apple TV 4K in the mix to get TV sound to the HomePod. So if you don't already have one, you've got to add that cost in, and then you're right there in the SVS's price class. The Sonos Beam is a one-box deal. It's very compact and it's smart, and it can be expanded upon. You can add a Sonos Sub and Sonos One speakers as surrounds if you want, though you'll be paying a pretty penny to do so. But also you can ask Alexa to play something from Spotify through the Beam, and you can't do that with the HomePods. And you don't need an Apple TV 4K to connect it to your TV. It's got HDMI built right in. So it's delivering a lot on its own for quite a bit less than the HomePod Apple TV 4K pairing that I've got going on here. With that in mind, what was it like having the HomePods as my music system and my home theater system? Well, in many ways, it was pretty freaking awesome, not gonna lie. Now, I wanna get into the fidelity, the sound quality characteristics of the speakers in a moment, but before I do, folks, we gotta talk about spatial audio. Now, I've enjoyed Apple's spatial audio for watching movies and TV, especially with the AirPods Max and an Apple TV 4K, but also just with an iPhone and AirPods Pro. I think you get a really immersive surround effect from this Apple product combo. It's easy, it's a ton of fun, definitely way more than just a fun party trick. Spatial audio for music? Well, it can be fun. I think a lot of folks like it, but I'm kind of old school when it comes to listening to music. Even with Dolby Atmos music tracks on Apple Music, sometimes the surround effect is more distracting to me than engrossing. But like I said, I think that's because I'm kind of old school. I don't tend to do surround music unless it's from a discrete multi-channel setup and mixed specifically for that multi-speaker arrangement. Even then, I'd argue that sometimes the stereo version is better than the surround mix, depending on the song or album. But now to the point. The pair of Apple HomePods They do an amazing job with spatial audio for movies and TV. Dialogue is crystal clear and perfectly centered. Sound effects are spacious and enveloping. I definitely got the impression there were more speakers in the room, and the sound stage wrapped just behind me and off to the sides with a virtual dome overhead going toward the front. Sound effects were clearly defined and had punch, and the bass output with 2 HomePods is very impressive for movies and TV. Sure, a subwoofer would take it to the next level, but for a 2-channel system, the HomePods are seriously impressive in the bass department, rivaling what I've heard from much larger speakers, even floor-standing speakers with big drivers in them. For Dolby Atmos music, well, again, I'm not sure it's my cup of tea. It's impressive, no doubt, but there were some times that I personally found the effect a bit distracting. Like, it just seemed like the spatial audio effects were disproportionately loud compared to the rest of the mix. Like a certain band of frequencies had been scooped up and over-accentuated. But I will also say that it didn't have that off-putting, super out-of-phase, forced fake surround sound that I've gotten from a lot of soundbars and TVs trying to virtualize surround. It's way more refined and effective than that. So again, just speaking about Dolby Atmos music from Apple Music. I might prefer the non-Atmos version personally, but I know a lot of people who experience it are gonna love it, like a lot. So for movies and TV, I felt like the HomePods brought something really special and remarkable. They pulled off Dolby Atmos better than the Sonos Beam, and of course better than the SVS, since the SVS aren't designed to fake surround sound at all. And I'd argue the experience was in some ways better than some soundbars with discrete surround speakers, like some of the more affordable Vizio soundbar packages I've reviewed. And a big part of the reason why is fidelity. So to be clear, I wouldn't classify this pair of HomePods as an audiophile grade powered speaker setup. The SVS Prime Wireless Pro are more neutral, revealing, and just more honest with how they play back music. In other words, the SVS Prime Wireless Pro really avoid that over-processed sort of DSP muscled sound that a lot of powered speakers have. And the HomePods do have a bit of that DSP muscle thing going on, but dang it, if Apple hasn't figured out a way to make me like it. This pair of HomePods puts out a deep soundstage with pinpoint imaging. It handles detailed transients with poise, delivering clean articulation and good high frequency response. They never so much as flirt with the concept of harshness or sibilance. They're a little sparkly, but that's more than I can say for a lot of powered speakers I've auditioned. The mid-range is lush, full-bodied and clear, if not just a bit forward in the mix, especially with vocals, which according to Apple is very much by design. And the bass, well, that's really the only area in which I have some mixed feelings. On the one hand, I'm impressed with how full-bodied, present, and punchy the HomePods sound. Like, all of that sound from these 2 small speakers, probably more impressive than I've heard from any other speakers of like size. But there's also a sort of, well, it's a sense like that they're working for it. Like, they get the work done, but I can't call the bass effortless. There's definitely some DSP muscle involved. And at times, I felt like the bass was just trying too hard. But that's the audiophile in me. I'm always listening out for that sort of thing. And I think that most people are probably gonna love this bass performance. Like, if you like Beats headphones, you'll love the bass performance of the HomePods. Fortunately though, I didn't get the big scoop out of the mid-range that usually comes with such plumped up bass. So that's a big win in my book. So the big question, would I put a pair of HomePods next to my TV in my living room and have that be my daily driver system for watching TV and listening to music? Well, yeah, I think I would. I already own an Apple TV 4K, so that reduces the barrier to entry for me. I'm an Apple user, still don't have a Mac yet, so they'd fit in with my lifestyle. They are awesome for watching movies and TV. Like, they'd actually outperform my tower speakers and Marantz receiver in terms of surround effects because they do spatial audio. And the fidelity is good enough that I'd be very satisfied using them for everyday music listening, even some occasional sit-down style music listening. And when I want that audiophile experience where nothing else but the music and me, I've got that in another room where I can go listen to music that nobody else likes. Now, if it was the HomePods versus a soundbar system in my living room, I'd take a pair of HomePods in a heartbeat. Now, the HomePods versus the SVS Prime Wireless or some other high-end powered speaker, well, I think the tipping point would be the surround effects for movies and TV. If that was my priority, HomePods all day. And yeah, I'm surprised I'm saying that. I didn't think they'd do that well, but they exceeded my expectations. And I say that having gone into this with some fairly lofty expectations in the first place. Are they for everyone? Certainly not. I still think the HomePod is best for Apple fans, and I don't know that buying just one HomePod makes a lot of sense for those wanting a smart speaker in their life. But buy two? Well, now that's a pretty magical experience. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. What do you think? HomePod's a yeah or nah for you? Let us know down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one, and until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like.